Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
My friend, let's call him Daniel, comes to visit me and my brother in Arizona. Plans to be out here for a week. Decide we should do like 2 nights of camping. Decide to camp at Rustler Park Campground in the Chiricahua Mountains. We know the mountain range as one of the 2 missing 411 hotspots in Arizona. Go anyway thinking what's the worst that could happen. The day comes where he lands at the airport. Me and my brother pick him up. And we head out to the highway with all our supplies that we had packed before arriving at the airport. Spend some time driving down the highway. Eventually take the highway exit the GPS tells me to. Follow a road for an hour or so. Road eventually leads to the first foothills of the chain and we begin ascending. Road turns into a dirt road quite quickly, not the best conditions for my minivan, which worries me. As we ascend we can see people along the way in different campsites. I wonder why they don't camp higher up. Spend like an hour or so driving upwards on this winding dirt road where there's always a cliff to my left. It's still around 3 or 4, so not too worried about nightfall. Eventually we make it and I see the campground sign. We pass the sign and I start assessing the campground. Only one person, guy camping in his trailer behind his truck, in the whole campground that could fit at least 50 people. Think that's odd since it's a Friday afternoon. Well, maybe since Memorial Day weekend is coming up, people are going to come next weekend. Notice a building marked guard shack, but no car anywhere near it. Alright, I guess it's just my group and this other guy in this campground. We drive past him and wave and he waves back, seems normal, so think nothing of it. We decided on a spot further up the road and around the hill behind the trailer guy so that we're out of his sight. Set up camp, and get to cooking. Everything is cool except the fact that it's extremely windy, like the strongest wind I've ever encountered in my life. I conclude that it must just be like that in this area, after all the campground's elevation is like 9,000 feet. The wind makes the cooking really difficult, so we just settle on snacks. Spend the rest of the night chilling and smoking and just catching up on stuff. Eventually go to bed. Wind makes it kind of hard to sleep that night, but I manage given how crazy it was. We wake up the next day and start to cook breakfast. But it was still pretty damn windy, so it made cooking difficult just like last night. Eventually we make our breakfast burritos and start to talk about the hike we're going to do. My brother volunteers to stay at camp and watch over everything since he's not too athletic. Me and Daniel start prepping our backpacks for the hike. 15 minutes before we head out, a car pulls up to us and it's this boomer guy in his Jeep. He asks us if we know where the trail starts around here. I tell him that maybe the guard at the guard shack knows. He says thanks and drives off. Realize there's probably not even a guard there since no car is around. Whatever, he should be fine. Eventually we head out for our hike. As we're walking away from our campsite, we decide to head to the guard shack since we think the trailhead may be around there. But then we see the boomer guy all the way down the road near the campground entrance. We wonder what he's doing then realize he's found the start of a trail. Figure we should do the same since we want to get started and aren't totally sure if there's a trailhead near the guard shack. Start heading that direction and start hiking the trail. Catch up to the guy and do some small talk. Think he said there's no guard there but can't quite remember what he said for sure. Say goodbye and hike ahead since we have a better pace than him. Our goal is to reach what's called Chiricahua Peak. Round trip comes around 8 or 10 miles-ish, can't quite remember. We hike for 2 to 3 hours and everything is cool and pretty normal for a missing 411 hotspot. Still pretty windy though. At one point the wind gets so strong when we reach this opening in the forest that I actually had to squat down and cover my face. Thinking to myself, this wind is nuts. Start to consider if the strength of the wind and its frequency is paranormal. Shrug it off. Think to myself, dude, you've been browsing too much, it's just wind and you're on a mountain. Eventually we get to this 5-way intersection on the trail. Trying to figure out where to go based on the signs, but it's kind of unclear. Notice 100 yards behind us on the trail next to the one where we came from is that boomer guy. Me and Daniel are confused since we're thinking, how did he catch up to us so fast? He approaches and we ask him how he caught up with us. Also, here's a pic of the campground for reference. The car you see in the pic is right next to campsite we were staying at. In fact, it's right next to where I parked my minivan, and behind the car almost like 75 yards away is the guard shack. To the left is where the entrance is, to the right is the direction where the trailer guy is. He tells us how on the trail we took you can take one of the side trails to reach a dirt service road and use it as a shortcut. Well, makes sense to me. Ask him if he knows how to get to Chiricahua Peak. He says he doesn't know, but he plans to go to Fly Peak since it's 2 miles closer and basically the same elevation. Talk to Daniel about it and agrees with me that we should do the same since we're getting kind of tired. Also, I forgot to mention that the entire time this boomer guy was carrying a monocular on a tripod. Which explains why he wants to get to the peak. Probably wants to get some good views or for photography or something. We assess the signs again, which are kind of crooked, but discern which trail leads to Fly Peak. It's a mile away. We say tell the boomer guy we'll see him up there and head upwards. Trail gets really steep and wraps around the peak. Eventually we lose sight of the boomer guy behind us and continue on. Make it to the top, and are pretty tired. Looking around and see a makeshift fire pit. Further away from where the trail ends I see a group of boulders. Decide we should go over there and chill. Which was a mistake. Maybe we can find a spot that blocks the wind from hitting us. And yes, the wind is still pretty damn strong. It's around 4 at this point. As we approach I heard a sound all of a sudden, like a mechanical sound. I'm confused since I'm thinking to myself that nothing in the forest makes a sound like that. Daniel notices I've stopped and am looking around, asks what's up. I ask him if he heard that, he said no, and I look around some more and assess the situation. Everything seems good. Maybe I'm just being nervous. Decide to pull out my oil pen and relax once we find a nice spot amongst the boulders. Once we do, we sit down and are having a good time for about 10 minutes. But then all of a sudden, as I'm sitting there, my ears pick up a sound, and it's this sound that the whole story revolves around. The sound sounds like several children chattering and laughing amongst one another. But it had this muffled nature to it, like the sounds were underwater. Well, how can that be? There's no water around here. Another thing that's bothering me is the volume of the sound. It's not that loud, but loud enough where I should be able to at least see it. I'm scanning the trees looking around, and I see nothing. Think I'm just being nervous once again. Maybe it's just the wind making sounds and shrug it off. Also, don't want to sketch out Daniel. Keep puffing on the pen, trying to relax. But there's an issue. The sound is still occurring and it won't stop. Start thinking to myself, alright, something ain't right here. There's no one else out here besides the boomer guy, Daniel, and I know this because from where the campsite is I can see the entrance of the campground and no one else entered besides the boomer guy. And there's no way they hiked up here that fast. Also, the sounds sound like children, so how and why would they be out here? It's like 3 hours to sunset. And that's when I had a realization. I'm in a mountain range that's classified as one of the 2 missing 411 hotspots in Arizona. I'm literally sitting on a granite boulder. And sunset is near. Realize the sounds may be Phi observing me and Daniel. Think, oh shit, we should out of here. Tell Danny we should head back since sunset is soon. I notice that he hasn't said anything about the sounds. Think maybe I'm just imagining the sounds. All those green texts must be making me paranoid or something. As we head back towards the trail I notice that the boomer guy isn't up here. Shrug it off since I just want to get out of there. Daniel take the lead and we reach the trail. As we march on I heard a thud behind me, like a coconut hitting the ground. I'm so on edge I do a 180-degree turn instantly and look to see if I can catch anything. Nothing at all, still kind of nervous though, keep pressing on. We reach the 5-way intersection, and up ahead we see the boomer guy. I guess he never made it up to the peak and quit halfway. We follow the trail he took since it probably leads to that service road he mentioned. Follow the trail, but have to take a break at one point since getting really tired at this point. At this point we can't see the boomer guy anymore. Continue hiking towards the campground for like 2 miles. Turns out the service road leads right back to the campground. As we reach the end of the road we see the boomer guy in his car driving off in the distance. We get back to the campsite and greet my brother. I decide not to say anything about what happened since I don't want to freak anyone out. And at this point I'm still thinking I may have been just hearing shit. We try to cook some dinner but the wind is getting even stronger than it has ever been. It's hitting our fire pretty hard and sending embers everywhere. My tent is almost sideways at this point and our chairs need to have rocks on them or they just get blown away. Can't cook at all since the wind is so crazy. We all decide just to pack everything up and evac out of there since the wind is just nuts. Spend 20 minutes throwing everything in my minivan and peel out of there. Realize that going down a one-way dirt road in the middle of night on some random mountain may not be the best idea. Check the map on my phone. Seems like there's another road to the east out of here. Realize that the guy with the truck and trailer couldn't have taken the road I took since it was so narrow and had tight turns. Conclude that he must have taken the road to the east and head that way. Spend the next 2 hours slowly driving through a bumpy-ass unmaintained road in the dead of night in a fucking minivan. Eventually we come out the other side of the mountain chain and have to pass through New Mexico to get back to the highway. 3 hours later we make it back to my place. We're all pretty tired so go to bed. The next morning I'm talking to them about the camping trip. I mentioned to my brother how I heard some weird shit on Fly Peak. Daniel butts in and says, "Oh, you heard those sounds too." And I said, "Daniel, didn't you say you heard nothing when I asked you back up there?" Referring to the mechanical sound I heard. And he said he didn't hear that but something after that. And I asked, "What did you hear?" And he said, "Oh well, it sounded like children laughing or talking." My mind blue screens. Yo Daniel, you're not trolling me, are you? He says I'm not and that he didn't mention it at the time since he was thinking he was just hearing stuff. I tell him I was hearing the same exact thing and didn't mention it either for the same reason. Kind of confused and freaked out about this revelation. Well, at least I am. They just shrug it off. Later I do some research on the area. Turns out there's 4 missing persons cases in that mountain range. Paul Fugate, a park ranger who went missing back in the 80s at the north section of the mountain range, specifically at Chiricahua National Monument. Jerry Hayes, a 5-year-old boy who went missing in 1938 from his parents' hunting camp. His dead body was found 3 miles away near Rucker Canyon. But it's the last 2 missing people's cases that weirded me out the most. Pick related, it's Paul Fugate. Those last 2 cases are of Janet Castrillon and Lawrence Cosden. Janet went missing in June of 2015, when she and her family were camping at Rustler Park. Lawrence went missing in September of 2015 at Rustler Park after he went for a hike with his cat. Thinking to myself, if I knew this information beforehand I wouldn't have gone camping out there. My face when I realized me and my friend could have become the next missing 411 case and be at the mercy of the Fae or whatever the fuck they are.
If you wish to learn more about these cases, then please check the links in the description below.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.